Hi everyone, it's Tico, and today's tarot tutorial is going to be examining numerology and really specifically looking at the numbers 0 through 10 as not just numbers representing, mathematics, but the symbolic or archetypal aspects of the numbers. And then this is going to follow into the next tarot tutorial where we're going to be putting the numerology with the elements that and relationships that we kind of learned and starting to put that all together. Mostly we're going to look at the symbols between 0 through 10 and how this would apply to the minor arcana. So while the same symbolic patterns will be the same when we examine the major arcana, we're also going to look in the major arcana into deeper into the numerology, looking at addition and reduction, and that's something that really doesn't necessarily need to apply with the minor arcana. I feel like what's more important with the minor arcana is looking at not just the symbols of the 0 through the 10, but also really looking at them all in that pattern, in that order, in that loop, because this will allow you as a reader to bring a lot more information into your reading. So for instance, let's say, before we even kind of get into maybe what this would kind of mean, let's pretend, they had the number, they have a 2 of Wands or 2 of Cups, something come up, right? And let's say that card is in the past, okay? So already in your head, very simply, I look at these really simple numerical loops going, right? So I know with that 2 that I could say right before that was the 1, the ace, and I know the meaning of that card and apply that and how it goes from the ace to the 2. And then I could also know coming next from that is the 2 to the 3. But all 3 of that little loop is, let's say if that was in, pretend that 2 of Wands was in the past spot, right? Okay, and then my next card I draw would be 3 of Cups, and that's in the present spot. I would look at that 3 of Cups and I would already know in my head then and bring into the reading that the 2 of Cups came before that in that same loop of energy, and the 4 of Cups is coming after that, but it's all manifested still right in that bubble, which let's say in this spot was like the present moment spot for the cards. So now I have these 2 numerical loops and I can look at how they're interacting, right? Because I have this one where I said energies are moving away, or this one dimension, and we have this present one here. And so you have one loop running and then the other loop running, and how are these running? So now if you're doing a 3-card spread, which is kind of what I had recommended if you watched my the tarot tutorial on using spreads, right? If you're doing a 3-card spread, then you would have that 3rd card, okay? And let's pretend that's a 7 of Swords. So I would know that the 6 of Swords came right before that, but still in that spot of the future thing, and then the 8 of Swords coming after the 7. So that I could tell them, let's say if we're looking at energies that are coming up or something that they might be processing, I see that the main theme is that 7 of Swords, but I know that that 6 prior and that 8 coming up are all integrated into that. And then you look at, well, how's that interacting with these other cards? The first card, and the middle card, let's say, and then the first card, the past card. How are that future and past card interacting? And then if you cross that center card, like I said in my spreads tutorial, right? Really looking at that energy, you get a whole nother number line and you can stack those 2. So now you just looking at the numbers, we've got these loops running, and now also look at those loops as kind of like these numerical discs, okay? And then go back and start associating what we had just talked about, the elemental applications and how those are relating, looking at their dignities, which ones are amplifying, which ones are ill-dignifying each other, how they might be interacting. And now we're going to start to get a meaning behind the symbols of the minor arcana cards. So the next tarot tutorial is really going to be looking at applying those together. So, okay, without further ado, we're going to get into just real brief application of the numerology from 0 to 10, and this is in the downloadable packet. Welcome new subscribers. If you're watching, I'm going to try to have these videos just come out as soon as possible to make them and to finish the series. It will take a while. I don't know if we're even halfway through, but just moving through this note packet is a free downloadable PDF. I highly recommend printing this out, putting it in a binder, using it as to start your own notes collection. You know, I'm not going to focus a lot into definitions of cards in these tutorials because there's so many amazing books. And there are great tarot readers out there that have done some really great tarot book reviews, and I can link a couple of those in the description. And also, I'll do some book reviews after these videos, you know, and I'm always open for questions, so please feel free to comment any questions or email or anything like that. But, so looking at the numerology then, starting with our 0, so this is just the symbols of what the numbers mean, right? 0 symbolizes pure potential, birth, death, rebirth, and opportunity. So when a Tree of Life video, where many of our numerology meanings come from as energy moves through the Sephira, that's going to be something completely separate, which also applies. But the big piece of both the corresponding between the Kabbalah and the numerology is that it's unmanifested yet. This is the opportunity. Okay? 1 is the unformed beginning of the earth, unformed beginning of the energy before it starts to manifest on earth. So the 0 is kind of that opportunity or potential. It's like that infinite potential, infinity, right? And then the 1 is still unformed, but it's the beginning of the energy. It's like on that energy pattern. It's starting to, that unformed energy is starting to move or swirl, right? So this is where we see it in our aces. They're new beginnings. This is a new energy. It's our infinite potential manifesting, and it marks the beginning of a minor arcana cycle, because with the major arcana, we have the 0, the Fool, but in the minors, there is no 0. I'll talk about that. I think there is one, so it's like the seed or the root of the element. So for each of the aces, Ace of Wands was considered the root of the element of fire, the seed of the element of fire. Ace of Pentacles was the seed of the element of earth, the seed of earth, or the root of the earth, or the root of the suit of pentacles. Okay, so each of the aces was like a root, just like a plant, and it's going to grow, right? How it develops, which is interesting because the Tree of Life, the energy goes down. Here, this metaphor is the root and planting and energy going up. In a Kabbalah series, I'll talk about the ascending and descending pathways on the tree and how we can use tarot for like path working for ourselves and stuff like that. Okay, so that's your aces then, right? They're the seed or the root of the element. Then from the ace comes to the 2, and this is duality. This is all opposites. This is our 2 poles. This is yin and yang energy. This is where the 1 manifests to the 2, creates a polarity, right? Which also has, you know, its own magnetism, you could say, its own repulsion systems. All those symbols would fall into that, right? 2s also represent choices, balance, partnerships, mirror images, separation, decisions, 2 forces coming together for a pure manifestation, union or harmony. All these different words could show up in there 2 of Suits. So 2 of Cups, 2 of Swords, 2 of Wands, 2 of Pentacles. How are things balancing, partnering, mirroring each other, separating, etc. 1 energy going this way, 1 going that way. For people that do reality transurfing, and you're looking at excess potential on one way, causing the yin and yang to go the other way, right? This is the representation of that 2 energy. So then from the 2s comes to the 3, right? So 3 is a number of creation. This is blending, this is mastery, this is advancement, and this is integration. So all these numbers with the number 3 in sacred numerology, right? Integrating, advancing, mastering, right? 3 is a number of mastery. It's a new manifestation that leads out of the 2. So you have this 2, and then it's a 1, but it's a 3, it's a third, it's something deeper, right? It's action, it's choice, and it's creative success. In all the suits, very good number, right? Boom, this creation. And then we'll talk about when we get to the major arcanas, like which major arcana it's governed by. So when we do the major arcanas, you'll probably want to come back and rewatch these videos again, or at least refer to your notes. But right now, just keeping on kind of that minor cycle. So like 3 of earth, right? Creation on the earth plane, etc. So from the 3 comes to the 4. This is stability. This is our quadrantary. This is an achievement. This is a foundation. After the creation of the 3, the energy is stabilized by the 4. This is where energy becomes self-disciplined for this practical and its structure, okay? So that's a 4 in each suit. 4 of swords, 4 of pentacles, the physical earth structure. 5 for the 4s turn into the 5. 5 is a number of change. It's chaos. It's disorder. It's disorder as the 4 becomes destabilized and goes out of balance. 5s also represent passion, adventure, travel, new possibilities, challenges that allow new growth, shaking things up, like chaos magic. This is learning and movement, right? So 5's are a really active number, and that's in all of the suits. In the minor arcana also are kind of hidden these like lessons as how to maybe, let's say, best handle or process each one of these energies. And that really ties into how the tarot calls on us to apply the Hermetic principles. And that will be a tutorial in the next 2. So that one's coming up also very soon. So from 5s, right? So that's all those keywords can represent in the number for the 5s of the suit. 5s moving to 6. 6 is a number of harmony. This is like interconnection, a spiritual kind of growth and interconnection. So like where the 4 was like a stability, the 6 becomes a harmony, right? After the change of 5, it's a higher vibratory, higher dimensional restabilization of energy patterns involving a real equal give and take relationship. It's a chance for rest and healing, compassion and generosity, balance, service, social responsibility, and taking care of ourselves and just our everyday needs. All those are represented in the 6s. Some would say the 6s are the highest representation on the minor arcana suit. So from the 6s goes to an excess of each suit. So whereas the 6 is perfectly balanced for each suit, 6 of Wands, perfectly balanced fire, the 7 would become, okay, now a little too much. Same with the 7 of Cups, a water, 7 becomes a little too much. So that 7 is that loss of stability brought on by some new awarenesses. So you get those awarenesses, and now that same harmony and stability gets shaken up. This is where it ties into a lot with spirituality, mysticism, again, healing, looking within for inner guidance. That's a part of process. So the 6, where everything was harmonized, has a little too much of that expression and goes to the 7, which is an off harmony then. That loss of stability calling for like an inward expression of that particular element. The 7 then moves to an 8, which an 8 is a reformation, usually on the mental plane. It's a call to action. It's where the unformed energy of that 7 now manifests in the 8. So this is a newer type of mastery, more of a mental mastery, closer to like an earth plane physical, right? Can symbolize autonomy, leadership, influence, honor, respect, an acknowledgement of error. Let's say that, it's a recollection, it's a re-examination. All these things kind of come into it. 8's also can call in good luck and new opportunities and abundance and revitalization for us and a progress towards completion, right? Because the 8 is right before completion, where 9 is the element, or the number, of the completion of the element. So the completion of the suit. 9 is a number of attainment, okay? 9 is a number of the final expression of the elemental situation occurring. So even though the tarot cards go to the 10, which I'll kind of talk about here, 9 is where you would think that loop stops. You're running 0 to 9 loop, even though the cards read from 1 to 10. 9 is when the element manifests. It is the attainment of it. It's the final completion. Let's think about if you're growing anything, vegetables, fruits, etc. This is the final end where we would harvest. Now, after the harvest comes the 10. There's still, let's say, a plant or a flower or something, right? Using that metaphor. I'm thinking about for the earth, the pentacles and the seeds, right? But it could be for any of the elements, any of those elements that you want to think about how they manifest all the way through that cycle. So the 10 is that ending process. It's the final transformation of that attainment. It's also preparing for a new cycle. It's preparing for that 1. It's the mastery achieved and integrating that. And so in there, even though it is this, like the 10s are these really like happy outcomes, there's always the seed of the ace that seeking that new pursuit is coming next. Like I said, if you were to pull a 10, right, and that showed up in one of the 3 spots in your spread, or however many spots you're using, that 10 shows that there was a completion, a 9 already. Sometimes people are stuck in that process. Sometimes that's the process that they're going through, where it's integrating and enjoying that attainment, but that ace is always present, right? Or if it's, if it's an ace, we know that the 10 came before that and the 2's coming next, right? So thinking again about how all these numerical cycles are going to run, especially when we're looking at the numerological aspects of the minor arcana, and bringing in those elemental relationships that we've talked about in the last tutorials. So the 10s are the 0s in the tarot. It's in the minor arcana. The 10s are the transition period between the 9 and the 1. It's the completion of one cycle and the prelude, the setting up of the energy patterns to begin another cycle, because those overlap. So you also have not just these mini cycles of saying, like if I drew a 4, the 3 came before it and the 5 came before that on this mini cycle. You've got these larger cycles, right? So when the 10 appears fixed, they always represent a change coming, right? So that's the big key.